I center the United States Constitution because that is the supreme law of the land. So my own opinion doesn't have the authority to change that. So that's why I center it, even though I understand that problematic history and also the fact that it's incomplete, right? With that said, there's a lot of problematic aspects to originalism, which is the fundamentals of what can influence judicial decision making. That is not paying attention to the words within the social contract, so the Constitution, but within other kind of texts that allow for further guidance of how they intended for the Union to be. My issue with this is that if the Constitution says that 2 plus 2 is 4, and originalism says that 2 plus 2 is 5, then what matters is that 2 plus 2 is 4. Even the originalist thinking that 2 plus 2 should be 5 should not matter. But there's so much ambiguity with the courts because Article 3 is incomplete that Congress creates that design for the courts. So ultimately, we don't have any actual codification for the judges. And therefore, what we've seen is a court that has positioned itself as superior than it actually was intended to be. Now, Federalist 78 tells us something very important, that the court, the judiciary, is supposed to be the weakest branch of government. It also is forbidden to play a political role in society, which is what they positioned when they didn't want to touch on disqualification, right? But what about the Missouri Supreme Court wanting to overturn the democratic choice of abortion, right? And I guess what I want to say is that a huge rot is that originalism, because let's consider Federalist 2. John Jay positions that with equal pleasure, I have as often taken notice that Providence has been pleased to give this one connected country to one united people. Note, the territory was already lived in by the Native Americans, right? A wide variety of tribes. So they positioned what manifest destiny, that this territory was meant to be taken by specific people. Who was that? White people. That's who he meant. A people descended from the same ancestors, so he means Europe, he means Britain, he means white. Speaking the same language, which he means English, right? In this reality, wouldn't this give some agreement and actual support to the Confederate and MAGA positions of white supremacy, right? Professing the same religion, what's that? Christianity, right? So that position's a Christian nationalism. But again, if the Constitution 1789 is the supreme law of the land, then Federalist 2 1787 cannot. Attached to the same principles of government, which that is a balance of various different theories in which created American constitutionalism. Founding fathers position that you go too much to the right, that is tyranny. You go much to the left, that is tyranny. The purpose is constitutional balance. Very similar in their manners and customs. Again, positioning that white supremacy, right? It's 1787, so obviously they have a certain person in mind, that's white men, and who by their joint counsels, arms, and efforts, fighting side by side throughout a long and bloody war, have notably established general liberty and independence. Again, liberty and independence. So freedom is not here because freedom is unconditional. Liberty can be restricted within a high threshold that's positioned within the Equal Protection Clause. Earlier in Federalist 2, nothing is more certain than the indispensable necessity of government, and it is equally undeniable that whenever and however it is instituted, the people must see to it some of their natural rights in order to vest it with requisite powers. Now that positions that we don't have an unconditional freedoms, right? We have liberties that can be restricted in order to uphold the constitutional legitimacy. And in fact, the preamble positions liberty, not freedom. But it's funny because we hold certain originalist principles to the forefront, right, but not others. Including Federalist 9, the Union as a safeguard against domestic faction and insurrection. A firm union will be of the utmost moment to the peace and liberty of the states as a barrier against domestic faction and insurrection. Yet we didn't do that because the Senate refused to impeach him, and the court refused to remove him from the ballot. As a result, he is currently our POTUS. And why? Because Chief Justice Salmon Chase said that if he interpreted Amendment 14, Section 3 to be self-executing, that meant it was unfair for the South, because then Confederates couldn't run for government. So in that reality, an insurrectionist was allowed to run. In this reality, we don't have a firm union because we allowed for insurrectionists to win. Yet, because a lot of these things aren't codified, there's a lot of room for interpretation in the Constitution, right? And that's the thing. Insufficient Constitution is what resulted in this crisis, is what's resulting in the collapse.